Words About Books is a poorly written podcast. I'm co-host Nate, and of course, as always, the grand poobah of books over here, Ben. Was that good?
It was better than the last time we tried to let you do the intro.
I'm improving.
You are improving.
Yeah, you set the bar pretty low, and then you can just walk right over it. All right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of low bars, when we last left Marjorie, she had flipped over a banister.
We're on part 3 of Head Full of Ghosts, which don't know how long it's going to be because it's about 4 chapters, but I think we have a decent amount to talk about in those chapters. So you want me to start? Oh wait, no.
Yeah.
It starts out with a blog, and
no.
I'm done with this. So I'm going to let you start.
Yes, it starts with another Karen Brissett blog, and she is talking about the last 4 episodes of Possession, and of course we're talking about the exorcism as it happened. Instead of the usual opening credits for the last episode, the camera did an Evil Dead style possession montage. She talks about how she notices that the drawers were rigged, or they seemed to be rigged, to pop open, that it wasn't actually demonic telekinesis.
She doesn't give away the fact that she was the younger sister, and so she has that knowledge.
Well, she freeze frames a clip from the show where you could see some kind of, the drawer is empty except for some device. That's how she determines that. And that's actually an interesting point, though, because I do believe that Mary / Karen is questioning her memories of the event, and she has probably meticulously gone over every frame of the series trying to figure out what actually happened in her childhood.
Doesn't she make the point earlier in the book on she doesn't know what's scarier, what happened to her, or the fact that maybe her memories of things were changed based on what she saw in the dramatization of her life?
Yeah. There's one quote I want to call out just for its comedic value. Karen remarks, "Trust the awesomeness and audacity of a show that works in found footage shot by the 8-year-old sister." Karen's not at all biased toward Mary.
Of course not. Why would she be? She's a completely different person.
It's like, did you see Mary in the corner of the one episode? You can kind of see her outside the kitchen window kicking a soccer ball, and yeah, I don't know why she didn't go pro. If it hadn't been for that knee injury. I apologize if you can hear me sniffling. I've got a little bit of a cold. I'm going to try to edit around it. Yeah, there's not a lot in this one. There's a couple of references to more horror.
It wasn't nearly as bad as the second blog post. She talks about what we already talked about, how John was portrayed as this tragic hero, and she seems to really hate her dad. I think she even just says, "fuck him," just in the blog. She hates him almost as much as we do.
I just wanted to quickly read over a couple of points. This final blog post, now that you know that it is Mary writing the blogs, it comes off a little bit introspective. I'm not quite sure what she was trying to do. I consider the last blog post the most interesting because it has the most emotional complexity. It's like one part Mary trying to figure out what actually happened that night, and then it's also part Karen pretending to be a cynical reviewer. There's a part where she says that the assisting priest is just so obviously there to be the sacrificial lamb, making it seem like she doesn't believe that the priest was actually injured during the whole exorcism.
You don't believe that she tore a strip of his flesh from elbow to wrist with her teeth?
I do, actually. Do you not?
Yeah, I didn't question that at all. Was I supposed to? Should I question everything?
Yes, always. But do you think it was
it
fake?
Is kind of... I mean, it's a produced exorcism, but I didn't question the fact that he was injured.
Oh, well, okay. That's what... I actually thought he was injured. I thought it was interesting for Karen to...
Did she question that he was actually injured?
She says that it's so obvious that he's there just to be the sacrificial lamb. It seems like Karen is saying that everything that happened in there was staged.
Okay, so she's tied up with restraints, but she says in the blog that the mother didn't actually restrain her, and we just can't see it. And so we just trust that she was restrained, and then after she bit that guy and ran, okay, so I guess, did they want the mom to not actually restrain her, or was the plan to have her bite this priest's skin off, and then what? Where do you go from there?
Okay. This is, I think, our main point of contention, our meaning Nate and I, about part 3. Because now, I will admit, after having all of part 2 and most of part 1 basically stating outright that she is not possessed, this is a mental illness, part 3 starts to, in my opinion, throw some shade at that idea.
How so?
Okay, because we know that some of the things that Karen is saying are staged actually happened. Karen is suggesting that the mother didn't restrain Marjorie properly because Marjorie needed to be able to appear to burst from the bindings. She's suggesting that they opened the windows to make it seem cold, which they did. She's suggesting that the drawers were rigged to open and close on their own, which they probably were. But she's suggesting also that the secondary priest is there just to be injured, which implies he wasn't really injured or that he knew that was going to happen. And I don't think that's true. So I can't tell if this is Mary honestly trying to figure out what happened. Like, she just honestly doesn't remember that night very well. But she narrated it to us. Karen's blog conflicts with Mary's own narration. And I wonder if Karen is just trying to play the part of the skeptic. She's going with the assumption that this whole thing could have been scripted. The truth is somewhere in the middle. It was partly scripted and partly staged, but Marjorie was a wild card. Now, I could totally believe that the mother did not restrain Marjorie, because what mother would?
Right.
But I don't think it was staged. I don't think they knew she wasn't going to restrain Marjorie.
Yeah, I don't think they did either. Did you think that I did?
I don't exactly know what Karen's trying to say, so I should probably state that at first. Because this chapter, it's been hinted at throughout the book that something bad happened to the Barrett family. And in this chapter, we really get explicit, I don't even want to call it foreshadowing, we're explicitly told that, well, I'll just read the quote. Other jackasses have tried to argue that it's John Barrett and not Marjorie Barrett who becomes the possession's true tragic figure, and that the show is really about his descent into madness, his being possessed by the ugliness of hatred and zealotry. His daughter's illness, his family's dysfunction, his unemployed status, and his beloved Catholic Church abandoning him post-exorcism. These are the aforementioned catalysts to his own psychotic break. See Howard Journal of Criminal Justice and their breakdown of the 4 types of men who kill their families. And blah, blah, blah. Fuck that bullshit. The possession tried to position John Barrett to be its hero and failed miserably. And his cruel, cowardly poisoning of himself and his family further discredits the show's reprehensible social and political agenda. Marjorie is our doomed hero. John Barrett was and is the wicked father, the wickedest of fathers. The show did succeed in one aspect. John was indeed a symbol of decaying patriarchy. So yes, I do think Karen does not like her father.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get when I...
The exorcism was the last episode of the show. The show was canceled after that. There were numerous threats of lawsuits and problems, and Father Wanderley and the Catholic Church sort of abandoned John in the family after this all went horribly wrong. We didn't get into it last time, but in Mary's description of Marjorie coming over the railing, it seemed as if Marjorie appeared stuck in midair for a second, and I guess it also appeared that way to many people on camera. They called it a levitation, but she hovered for a second, fell to the ground, and broke her leg. So I don't think she levitated.
The demon was having performance issues. But you know what I just realized? He never follows up at all, and it's probably not important, but with Father Wanderley.
No.
There's some conspiracy about Father Wanderley and the funding and everything, and then you never know what happens to him after this.
The book it's a very short book, actually. I think it's the shortest one we've covered so far.
Even shorter than Bruce Campbell. I find that impossible to believe.
Well, maybe if you don't count the pictures.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
We got into this a lot last time, so I won't dive into it too deeply, but I do think that the book could easily have been another 100 pages long if they could have explained why any of this happened. Why the Catholic Church allowed this guy to perform this exorcism. Did they allow him to perform this exorcism? Where the money came from? And those would have been interesting things for the Karen blogs to go into.
Maybe I wouldn't have hated them so much. By the way, Bruce Campbell does beat this book by 16 pages.
Now, Nate, your second favorite kind of chapter comes up.
Yeah. Pretty much, I think all the blogs... Well, no, I guess the first one is preceded by an adult Mary chapter. And the other two are... Yeah, okay. This chapter. And I just can't. Rachel says she read the blog 3 goddamn times. And then she rubs salt in my wounds by complimenting those blogs as very well written. Fuck you. Rachel in this universe is supposed to be an award-winning author. If she finds these blogs to be well written, then either she's an idiot or we're in alternate version Earth where everyone's an idiot and the standards of writing have plummeted.
Can I read you a quote from the book and then my note?
Yes, please do.
I've read the series of essays on the show 3 times now. It's very well written and a compelling criticism and deconstruction. And my note is, oh no, how did Nate survive this line?
Yeah, I rolled my eyes so hard.
That's when I was like, oh man,
This is the sniffing your own farts thing. This is the 2 people at Panera talking about the script they're writing and how amazing it is. Very loudly for everyone to hear.
But it was basically just like, yeah, John bad. TV tried to make John the
We
main
live
character.
in a society.
Yeah, we do. We sure do, buddy. Let's move on. There's other things in this book besides these blogs.
If people need an example of something that is not well written, but also the authors don't pat themselves on the back about it, Eden is on Amazon for whole $5 if you hate yourself and hate money. I'm just gonna get that. I have to get that plug-in. That's my gimmick.
We need to get a sponsor. So you don't have to. Please sponsor us, so that Nate doesn't have to do this anymore.
All right, let's get back to the book. So, we're in the next chapter where she's talking with Rachel. Rachel compliments her blog. No one buys it. They talk about the injury that Marjorie had, which you talked about. She broke her ankle, and the production company, they got out of there same night. They did not do any follow-up. That was the last episode of The Possession. And Marjorie was again hospitalized in a psych hospital. And then she got a state-assigned psychiatrist twice a week. It's an amazing mental health budget. I gotta point that out, because I don't think that exists anywhere near where I live.
You don't have psychiatrists doing house visits twice a week?
No. I think our state's plan for mental health is to just ignore it and then hope for the best. So it's revealed that, like I touched upon last time, Marjorie was not taking her psychiatric medication, and that a man from the church from the Midwest that shall not be named in the book for some reason, that the father punched, I guess John got in contact with him, right? Or was it vice versa? I guess it doesn't matter. John started emailing the guy that he punched, and I guess it started out as profanity laden, like, fuck you. And then it eventually turns to him asking this guy for advice because John's an idiot. And he's the worst.
We need to back up.
Yeah, you go for it.
I think those blogs just destroyed any like compassion or sympathy for the characters you could have possibly had. The book closes on another present tense chapter, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So in this chapter, it's revealed that yes, John did kill his family, except for Mary. Everyone else is dead. So we find out that Mary went to live with her aunt after the tragedy. We also find out that Mary never spoke to anyone from the show again. She never talked to or saw Ken after the show. She mentions that she wrote him letters, but she never mailed them. And
wonder what those would have been like. Hey, so my family's dead. How are you?
I think at this point, so yes, the emails. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that because Mary's whole demeanor throughout the conversation, this is a conversation she's been dreading having. She's very vulnerable here and nervous almost. But the one thing that makes her really perk up and get engaged in the conversation is when Rachel, the author, mentions that she has the emails that Mary's father had exchanged with the pastor from that particular Baptist church. And we find out that it was the same protester that the dad punched. The first emails are from the church leader, and they have the same slogans and hate that were on all the signs, and the dad goes back and forth. The dad tries to argue theology and scripture, but you can't win a bad faith religious argument. So,
many have tried before. It doesn't work.
The dad's also not very good at it. And it's partly because the dad doesn't have a church anymore. He's basically been abandoned by the Catholic Church. They don't say specifically that he was excommunicated or anything, but he feels that he was duped, that Father Wanderley lied to him, that the makers of the show lied to him, and
it's everyone's fault but his own.
Throughout the course of their emails, the pastor from a church that rhymes with Schmuro Schmaptist.
And it has its headquarters in Kansas, and they're on the news from time to time picketing funerals. Yeah.
So a pastor from that church starts to sense John's vulnerability when John mentions in one of these emails that, the Catholic Church lied to him. It's like, well, yeah, they lied to everybody, buddy. Didn't you know that? And he starts basically radicalizing John. And the last email that John gets from the pastor, which was sent 3 days before the poisoning, ends with the line, "John, you know what you have to do." And that really shakes Mary up. And it obviously shakes Mary up for the reasons that, she's reliving a terrible trauma at this point, but it's important information, and it's going to become more important as we get into our final thoughts, but I just wanted to get it on the record there that Mary has never seen these emails, and she is kind of genuinely surprised by their content, even though she claims to have already known, where Dad got the idea for this. And it also comes out that the type of poison that was used is a type of poison that the church had access to, and that John doesn't seem to have acquired through any reasonable means. It seems like somebody gave him the poison because he didn't purchase it. No stores around him sold it. So he would have had to order it, and they just couldn't find any records of it. So that becomes important later, too. The other thing that becomes important is that Rachel has a police report And the police report notes that the only fingerprints found on the vial of poison are the father's. And with that, I will turn it back over to you to continue summarizing, even though you hate Mary.
Well, we're going back into the past now to good Mary. So future Mary tells the last leg of this story, and she says she's going to try to rush through it as quickly as possible. So in the past, it's 6 days away from Christmas, because of course it is. She is upset because the family won't get a tree, so she's giving everyone the silent treatment. Marjorie tells Mary to come to her room, and it's a life or death important situation. Marjorie tells her that she did this whole show so that people see that it is in fact John who really needed help. And I can agree with that. He needed a lot of things. She cites a study of a bunch of patriarchal men who blame the breakdown of their family life on something outside their control, which sounds like John. And she thinks that her dad fits into this mold.
I do want to just add in that the journal she cites those studies having been in is the same journal that Karen references in her blog. I thought that was kind of neat.
Ah, that went right over my head. I wonder why.
Because you hate Mary and you're not fair to her.
I hate Karen, for sure. And her shitty blog look like it comes from a Zanga account. Back to Marjorie. Marjorie says she pretended to be sick the whole time, and that all the sessions with Dr. Hamilton were about her dad. And since the show went off the air, nobody but their dad has gone into the basement, which she said he's turned into some crazy shrine, and dad has lost his grip on reality, essentially. She ends this discussion by showing Mary some potassium cyanide, which she found in the basement, and she claims that he plans on poisoning the family with. Any thoughts on this? What do you...
Well, first I want to make a correction to what you said. The father is not the only person Marjorie claims goes into the basement. Marjorie also claims that, and I quote, "Mom is getting sick too. You know she is. She's breaking down and can't handle it. I've seen her down in the basement with him, praying, saying and doing weird things. We have to do something before it's too late. We have to help them, have to save them." She's accusing the mom of going down, of knowing what's in the basement, and of participating in the dad's weird rituals.
Instead of just divorcing his ass.
She's exaggerating a lot of stuff, but right. I don't think she's outright making it up. Now, I find it difficult to believe that the mother is participating in the dad's religious rituals, but the shrine is not entirely fake. It's just not as elaborate or weird as she made it out to be. He kept a large pewter cross prop from the exorcism set, and he has that prominently displayed in the basement. And she does have a vial of poison that the dad has. It is described as a white, powdery, granular substance.
The poison can be used, I guess, to keep the cross shiny and polished.
The substance is primarily used as a jewelry cleaner.
Okay, yeah.
And that's one of the...
It had an actual purpose.
He could have acquired it from a jewelry store. And there is a member of the Shmesh Shmuro Shmaptist congregation mentioned in the police report who has... So somebody in that church owns a jewelry store. So it's plausible that they could have gotten the dad the poison, but circumstantial. Marjorie also tells Mary about a few interesting things that have happened before Mary was born or when Mary was very young. I'm gonna list these, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how relevant this is, or if they were graphically detailed stories about them loudly fucking each other in their bedroom and late at night on the living room couch and on the floor in front of the TV. There was a story about them drunkenly slapping each other in the face after a date night gone bad, with Mom kicking out the window in the back door as the final blow. They went away to marriage counseling for 2 days after that. There was a story about the time that Dad yanked Marjorie away from the crib because she was writing on Mary's face with a marker, and he yanked her so hard that he pulled Marjorie's arm out of its socket. There was another time where her mother started screaming wildly at 2-year-old Mary because she wouldn't uncover eardrops that she needed for an ear infection. And that's when she says that the mother is getting sick too. So, as far as the stories about the parents having sex goes, I guess, a married couple is going to do that. I am sorry Marjorie caught them so many times, but it doesn't sound like they were necessarily putting on a show. The fact that they both hit each other is troubling, and the fact that
unless they're into that,
it doesn't sound like they were. And it sounds...
Have you never kicked out a window while engaging in foreplay?
No. Never been that near a window. The other thing that troubled me is the dad yanking Marjorie so hard that her arm comes out of its socket. I forget, Mary is 8, and Marjorie is 14. So Marjorie would have been...
Mary's 9.
Whatever. Right? Okay.
Yeah, so, I'm going to argue minor details if you are.
So, minor details? Oh, I am building my case here. So, Marjorie would have been 5 or 6 at the time the dad yanked her arm out of its socket. I don't know. I know exactly how much force actually it takes to rip my arm out of its socket. I would have to say you're definitely using too much force if you're yanking a 6-year-old's arm out of its socket.
Did he reset it on his own? Just pop it back in?
I guess she went to the hospital.
Well, then they had some just shitty nurses and doctors there, because you show up with an injury like that, people start asking questions. Like, are you a bad father? Oh, yes, you are. That kind of question.
If they told the truth about how it happened.
Fell out of a tree. And
so I popped my shoulder.
A man broke into our house, and he tried to steal her arm.
I really doubt he went to the emergency room and was like, she deserved it. My point is, Marjorie details stories of abuse. I believe all of these things happened. The only thing I find totally unbelievable is that the mom is participating in prayer alongside the dad in the basement. I think Marjorie probably made that up, but I do think Marjorie has some kind of grudge against both of her parents. I do believe that a disproportionate amount of her conversations with Dr. Hamilton related back to her father. And I think that is supported by the fact that before all of this started, arguably the event that started all of this is that Dr. Hamilton wanted to speak to Marjorie's father, and he didn't go. Because Marjorie probably was accusing him of things, and they probably weren't wholly fabricated.
Well, remember, it's everyone's fault but John's.
So there's 2 options to me. 1, the dad was given the poison with the intention of killing his family. 2, Marjorie acquired the poison. Because we don't know where the poison came. It's very plausible that it could have come from the church, but it's not proven. And we only have Marjorie's word that she just found it down there.
I don't think Marjorie was the one who acquired it. I think it was John.
I was trying to think of other ways it could have gone down. Could see it. I guess if you were trying to say, like, beyond a reasonable doubt, was John planning to kill his family? I suppose I have a reasonable doubt. But with those emails, like, I don't know. I think I'd vote to convict here.
I almost think John is too big of a pansy to actually go through with it. I think that he considered it and he got the poison, but he wouldn't have actually been able to go through with it. I could be wrong on that. I would definitely convict him, though. Especially in the world of the story, we wouldn't know what actually happened, so we would just, yeah, it was John. Fuck that guy.
Well, let's save this for our final thoughts. Let's
talk about the actual poisoning.
I don't know if we established this earlier in the story, but the family eats a lot of spaghetti. Perhaps too much spaghetti. And
yes.
Marjorie tells Mary that their dad is planning to kill them with this poison, and they need to act first to save the parents from themselves. The way they're going to do this is the family will be eating spaghetti again tonight. The sauce is being cooked as we speak, and we're going to go down and pour a bit of the poison into the sauce. Not enough to kill them, just enough to knock them out. And when they get down there, Marjorie is having difficulty moving around with her walking boot from her injury. So she gives Mary the jar of white powder, and she has Mary dump it into the sauce. And their plan for escaping the same fate as their parents is that Mary never eats red sauce on her pasta. And Marjorie just doesn't eat very often, so she just won't eat, and Mary will take her pasta without sauce. The parents will eat the sauce, and they'll get knocked out, and then they can go run and get help. So the family sits down to eat, and as Marjorie sits down, to Mary's great surprise, Marjorie looks like she has been crying. Her eyes are red and she's got dark circles. And Marjorie grabs just a whole heap of that spaghetti sauce and starts eating it. And Mary is still giving everybody the silent treatment, but she's made these cute little signs to speak to them that have like pre-written phrases on them. And she's like trying to signal to Mary, like, why are you doing this? Or she's trying to signal to Marjorie, why are you doing this? And Marjorie just talks about how good the sauce is, how, oh, Mary, you should try some. You should eat sauce. When you're bigger, you're going to like it. And the parents are just like, yeah, I don't care. It happens pretty quickly. So quickly that Mary can't quite believe it. And there's a high-pitched screech of forks rubbing against ceramic dishes, breaths becoming heavy and infrequent with occasional gagging, and everyone's head drops and the bodies slouch, and the entire family, save Mary, is dead.
Very well written.
Can't tell, are you being sarcastic?
No, I'm serious. I thought there was a lot of tension, even though you knew what was going to happen. You know exactly what the future holds, and it's like a train crash. You can't stop it. You can't look away.
We do this as a book club style podcast. I don't know how many people actually read the book along with us. I hope
everyone.
I hope you do read this chapter in the book because the summary is not doing it justice, and I wouldn't try to. The only way I could do it justice is to just read it word for word, and that says a lot about how it's written. And this was a case of the last quarter of the book I read all at once. I stayed up way too late, had work the next day, but I got to the point where I realized Marjorie was going to make Mary be the one to put the poison in the sauce. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is awful. Like, it was so brutal. And it just gets worse. Rachel and Mary are talking, and Mary says that all she remembers is getting up from the table and going to her room and reading a book and falling asleep, and then remembering her aunt coming to get her. That's not what happened. Rachel has the police reports, and Rachel knows what happened, and Mary has also seen the police reports, but she does not remember the events that way, and she doesn't want to. But what actually happened is that Mary never left that table, and they found her 3 days later when Marjorie's court-appointed psychiatrist came for a visit and could not get into the house, and nobody answered. They found Mary underneath the table with her dead mother's thumb in her mouth after 3 days. And it was one of the most horrible things I've ever read.
Absolutely.
And of course, it was 6 days from Christmas. So,
oh man, yeah, this was probably, I guess I'd say my favorite chapter, just for everything it puts you through.
You're prepared for John to attempt to kill his family. You're emotionally prepared for that.
Right.
It's been leading up to that. You know where the tension is, but then when you find out it's actually Marjorie, I want to save some of this for closing thoughts, because we got to get through the rest of the book before we dive into this, because this will be the bulk of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, so go ahead, take us home. One last chapter back in the present day with Rachel and Mary in a cafe. So
in this chapter, there's really not a lot of important information to convey. It's another chapter that I really think you should, if you're interested in the book, you should read. Paul Tremblay is really, after struggling with some of the blogs, we've made fun of some of his writing, but he does know how to deliver good and intensely emotional, intensely sad situations. So as Mary finishes telling the story to Rachel, she reveals to Rachel that she has not ever told anyone that story before. And Rachel comments offhand that she almost doesn't know what to do. When Mary asks what she means, Rachel changes the subject, but I'm guessing Rachel does not know whether or not she should publish this or what's going to happen to Mary. And I don't know that it's like a legal issue.
I don't think anyone would press charges against an 8-year-old.
No. And there's, like we said, there's no evidence that Mary even did this. And Mary cannot remember. The only fingerprints on that bottle are John's fingerprints. Mary's prints weren't there. So, did it happen that way? We don't know. And another bit we need to get into is going back to the previous Rachel and Mary chapter. This is why Mary was so anxious to get her hands on those police reports, those emails between her father and the pastor. this is the first concrete evidence she has that Marjorie wasn't just making it all up. I don't know how helpful that is with the guilt Mary must feel, but there's at least now some evidence that she acted in a perverted kind of self-defense, as opposed to just the ravings of a very sick girl. I think Rachel is she doubts Mary's story, and I think she wants to doubt Mary's story, as we all want to doubt Mary's story. Up until this point, Rachel and Mary have really been bonding. And Rachel reminds Mary of what her mother might have been like if she had lived to the present day. Rachel is, I think, coming to mean a lot to Mary. This is their last session. This is the last time they're going to talk about the book. And prior to this, Rachel mentioned that they should get together after Rachel gets back from a business trip and talk about something other than the book. Just speak as friends. And now that Mary has told the story, she sees that Rachel has changed the way that she seems to look at Mary and act towards Mary. And again, we can't tell for sure if Rachel actually has changed, if Rachel's just sort of still in shock at absorbing this horrible story, or if, she really doesn't want anything to do with Mary.
Well, if Rachel was able to still hang out with Mary after reading those blog posts, if anything, this thing that happened when she was 8 or 9, it's only going to strengthen their bond, right? She can get through anything if she can get through those blog posts.
Oh.
I'm just an asshole. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry, but
there's an ongoing background event unfolding as Mary's telling the story to Rachel, and it's that Mary feels hot and warm as she's telling the story. She's just becoming physically uncomfortable. She mentions it to the barista of the coffee shop they're at, but he doesn't have any control over the thermostat, he tells them. But as Rachel talks, as Mary talks, she feels the room getting colder and colder, and the barista comes out and he says, "Oh, hey, it's a lucky day," and he winks at her like the furnace broke. So it's going to be pretty cold in here from now on. And as Mary is leaving, she's kind of disassociating after having unburdened herself of this huge emotional issue, and the prose of the book really plays up the temperature of the room, and it makes it seem unnatural or disorienting the way that things are becoming so cold, and Mary's just kind of feeling foggy. I'm not sure why he chose to end the book with so much weird environmental description.
Because now she's possessed.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I wouldn't even mention it because I think we do both agree that I don't think it meant anything. I think it was just a stylistic aesthetic choice. But
it might detract from the ending because you're focusing on the heat.
Yeah, it was just strange. I guess it's because it's from Mary's perspective, and Mary is just outside of herself right now, and so maybe it's just supposed to be a trippy walk in Mary's shoes. But the book ends very abruptly. Mary tells Rachel the story, and Rachel says that they'll meet again when she gets back, but Mary doesn't believe her anymore. They go their separate ways, and we don't find out if Rachel decided to publish Mary's version of events. We don't get any real closure.
Yeah, in all honesty, I would be surprised if Rachel thought that she was some sort of horrible monster.
I definitely think Mary wasn't. My personal belief is that I hope Rachel did contact her after she got back, and that they do have some kind of relationship, even if it's just the occasional cup of coffee.
Well, time for us to start writing fanfic.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to end the book, because what closure could there possibly be for Mary? I mean, she's been dealing with the trauma of this since it happened. I imagine there's not a day go by she doesn't think about it. She lives off of the residuals from the show.
Her job is a direct result of it.
Yeah, I don't imagine how she could go through her life ever thinking, what might have been if things just weren't so fucked up.
I wonder if she still does not eat red sauce on her pasta.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wonder if she's traumatized, like, I'm never eating red sauce.
I probably just would steer clear of spaghetti.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, just never again. No more pasta.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about
your favorite spaghetti recipe.
I don't have one. I don't actually care for red sauce that much myself.
You and my wife. All right.
I'll eat it. I just don't like it that much, and I am now deeply skeptical of it. So I'm most interested in the relationship between Mary and Marjorie. I think it's very interesting that Paul Tremblay decided to tell this from the perspective of two sisters when it's a book about a family dynamic. I think he is trying to make some sort of statement about, God, I hesitate to say,
toxic masculinity.
Ooh.
Or just what goes on behind closed doors in a seemingly normal family. Just that this family had all of these problems, and it could have been any family. It could be anyone you know. Just totally normal people dealing with horrible things that they have little to no control over, and how we turn to the supernatural for explanations of things like that to this day. But the interesting thing about the relationship between Mary and Marjorie is, I don't know if I were Mary, if I would have been so sympathetic and forgiving towards Marjorie. I understand I don't like their father. He is an objectively bad person. And in many ways, he let his own insecurities destroy his family. But Marjorie is kind of a monster. And I don't know that it's all the mental illness.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, so in the first part, I may have mentioned this. We were talking about how she threatened to cut her sister's tongue out.
Yeah.
And I could forgive that, the threat, not the action, but I could forgive that on the basis of she's schizophrenic and they don't have complete control over their thoughts and their actions, and it was horrible, but I could see that more as the disease.
I agree.
Killing your parents and yourself and making your sister carry out the execution is a whole different level, and I definitely couldn't see that as all the disease process.
Yeah, I don't know enough to speak from a medical perspective on what the disease, like, to what extent is Marjorie responsible for her actions. Mary seems to really love Marjorie and in many ways emulate the kind of person that she thinks Marjorie was, or the kind of person that she thinks Marjorie might have been able to become.
And part of that might have been she yearned for a time before the schizophrenia, and her thoughts of how her sister used to be in her youth.
That makes sense to me. I have overwhelming sympathy for Mary. I'm not blaming Mary for anything, but I'm surprised how kind the book is to Marjorie in a lot of ways. Aside from describing accurately the things she does, the parents definitely failed these kids. The father more so than the mother. But Marjorie, it's such a mixed bag with her. Like, she's either totally crazy and she doesn't understand the impact of her actions, or she's a manipulative monster. I can't think of any other way to say it, because she's got enough rational intelligence to plan the attack, we'll say. Basically the murder. She has enough rational intelligence to plan the murder of 3 people, including herself. She acquires a weapon. She comes up with a plan to do it. She manipulates her sister into helping her. But she doesn't seem to appreciate or care about the effect that's going to have on her sister. Like, if Marjorie knew all of these things were going to happen, if she knew her dad was plotting to kill them, she could have just taken that vial of poison to the police. She could have taken it to her aunt.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a precedent here of, look, this guy has been endangering me and has not been the best for my health. Instead of taking me to see a psychiatrist, he put me on TV for everyone to see, and now he has this vial of poison, so get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
you know,
and I can kind of see now, arguing against my own point, I can kind of see how she might think, I have no choice. In my own way, I've been crying for help for a long time now, and nobody's taking me seriously, or nobody's listening to me. And why do I think if I go to the police or if I go to a family member that they're going to take me seriously, or they're just going to think that I'm crazy? And they're going to send me right back. And the only difference now is he'll know that I know and that he needs to act more quickly.
You know what this is reminding me of, and you can cut this out. You listened to the podcast. Is it Last Podcast on the Left?
Yeah.
They did a breakdown, or whatever you want to call it. They did a podcast on Chris Benoit, who killed his family and himself, a double murder-suicide. And he had his brain was essentially hamburger because of all the stupid shit he did in wrestling. And I don't think anyone gives him a bye just because his brain was fucked. I think people rightly see him as a monster for what he did.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, because you could argue that what he did, would it have happened if he didn't have those injuries?
Probably not. But
it's a shitty situation all around.
I mean, that almost seems irrelevant, though. Yeah, it's a shitty situation. Would it have happened if he didn't have the injuries? Well, would this have happened if Marjorie didn't have the schizophrenia?
Well,
it doesn't excuse anything.
It doesn't excuse, but it mitigates. If somebody has diminished capacity to control themselves, I do think it's fair to hold them to a slightly different standard. I don't think it means that, are they legally insane? Do they understand it's right and wrong? Do they understand? Oh, what's the test? The McNaughton rule or something? I don't know that you don't have to personally believe that killing is wrong. If you know that society thinks killing is wrong, then you're still legally sane. I think by that definition, Marjorie is not like legally criminally insane. She knows that killing is wrong.
Right.
I'm very surprised how sympathetic Mary is to Marjorie. That was one of the themes. I can definitely see why she is so sympathetic towards Marjorie, but in the end, probably the greatest trauma in Mary's life was orchestrated by Marjorie.
What do you mean, probably? That is definitely
yeah.
the greatest trauma in her life. I would hope.
Yeah,
I hope there's
that's
nothing
my thing.
worse
That's what I was going to
say.
I hope it is, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it's just easier to put all the blame, in her mind, easier to put all the blame on her dad. Her dad caused Marjorie to get to this point, and it wouldn't have happened if he wasn't such a shitty dad. It's easier to hate one person than to hate, both of them or even all three of them.
Her dad definitely had a greater degree of control over the situation. Her dad was more in control of his own actions, and her dad was more responsible. Because like I said, I do not think Marjorie brought that poison into that house.
Right.
I think the dad brought it in, and I think he did intend to kill them, and I can also see the point that Marjorie would not be believed if she went and she did try to get outside help.
Well, now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking... So I was thinking that the dad maybe wasn't capable or was having second thoughts, kind of in the middle, though, so he didn't get rid of the poison, right? But if she did go to the police and no one would listen to her, then that would pretty solidly put him into the kill my family camp. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, I definitely, regardless of whether he was having second thoughts or not, he shouldn't have had poison in his house, and he shouldn't have been talking with the northbound ultra-conservative church about killing his family.
Yeah. I definitely think the dad planned to kill them. The dad is a villain, no doubt. I'm not arguing that Mary should not hate her father. Maybe Mary is just trying to understand Marjorie. Because I guess there's two ways you could look at it, is that in her own screwed up way, Marjorie saved Mary.
That's true.
Do you think Marjorie believed that she saved Mary?
Either that or... Yeah, I guess. I think she would because of the grandiose ideas that she's had. Like, I've saved this family with this show, and yeah, she's probably thinking, I'm going to save my sister at the cost of the family.
I think I was so in Mary's headspace when I read this the first time through that I was like, oh, and she views Marjorie as a protector. A deeply flawed protector, but a protector.
She wasn't the hero that we need, but she was the hero we deserve.
She was the hero that we didn't want around. She's not a hero, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Marjorie could orchestrate the whole thing, but then not realize that how it's going to go down after the fact.
Yeah,
Mary's going to be stuck there.
She's like an incredibly high-functioning schizophrenic. You don't normally see someone like this. If a schizophrenic person wants to hurt you, you generally know that they want to hurt you. They're looking at you and they're making threats in your general direction, and they look pretty aggressive. It's pretty clear. They're not planning some elaborate scheme to get you. They're going to go over and try and kill you.
Do you think she was possessed? Final thought.
Yeah. Now that we've gone over part 3, despite a lack of evidence, I think I've come around to the fact that she was possessed. And then when she died, the demon went inside Mary, and now she is an X-Men who can control the temperature in small cafes.
She can control furnace valves. She can.
Yeah,
She
and
can break
eventually
any
we're going to
furnace.
learn that this is in the same world as the Poppy War, and she's a shaman, and then we're going to have a crossover.
In all seriousness, do you? I have a question. I do have a question I want to ask you.
What do you mean, in all seriousness? Are you saying that wasn't a serious reaction?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to imply that.
Okay, I'll accept your apology. What's your question?
How do you think Marjorie knew about the poison?
Yeah, actually, when I read that, my first response was, bullshit. You did not know that. I don't know. Because I've, like we've already said, I find it really difficult to believe that Marjorie was the one who obtained the poison. It's so much more plausible that it was Dad. And how she found out about it, I have no idea.
I have a thought.
Maybe she was researching it, and I don't know, because she also told that story about the dad poisoning the mom. What's your thought?
My thought about how she knew about the poison, and also how she knew she needed to act just after that final email where they said, you know what you need to do. I think Marjorie was reading his email.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you think Marjorie was the church member.
No.
I guess it's possible, yeah.
I think
That's actually, yeah, that's very plausible. That makes a hell of a lot of sense when you say that.
I think Marjorie was exceptionally tech savvy, and I think seems like John's a dumb enough guy to, save his passwords or to use
password is password.
Yeah, or to leave it on a sticky note on the on the monitor, or just, she knows the code to his phone or something, and she's been reading his email this whole time. But you're right about her initial story that seems oddly prescient when she predicted that the father would try to poison the mother and possibly the children. And that she would connect the basement to that as well.
So maybe Marjorie was the church member.
I don't think she was the church member.
Yeah, I don't think so
I think
either.
there's two possibilities there. It's that Marjorie is just... I don't think it's unreasonable for a person who knew John well to predict that he might have those kinds of thoughts. I think Marjorie is troubled and perhaps thinks obsessively or has intrusive thoughts. And once she got a hold of research about the types of personalities of men who kill their families, she was able to correlate that with her father's personality. And from that, she could guess that, if he were going to attack, he would attack with this kind of weapon or this type of way. There's plenty of research on, process killers, impulse killers, things like that. So I think it's reasonable to suspect that she could analytically come up with that story and it be pretty close to the mark. The fact that she came up with that story is the only thing I can think that points to any kind of supernatural abilities going on here. And I think if there were any supernatural abilities, it would be along the lines of her madness, for lack of a better word, is allowing her to see connections that other people can't. Which is a stretch. And I acknowledge
yeah, it
it's a
sounds like
stretch.
that shitty schizophrenic detective show.
Yeah. So I don't think that's what's going on here. I don't think that's what Tremblay intended at all. I think it's a more benign thing that maybe she does think differently than a lot of people, but not supernaturally different. Not that she has superpowers, just that she noticed this about her father's personality and she was able to research it and get some ideas put into her head that, he might be, if you took him to his darkest extreme, this is what he would do.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts that you have?
I feel like I'm doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I know. I feel that way too. I'm sitting back in my chair. I'm putting my feet up.
All right. I think that probably does wrap up our discussion. That was Well, one more point.
Oh, Jesus.
Hang on, I need to adjust my seating position for this.
Do you think it was racist that all the Hesperians look like you?
Deeply. But that's not the point. Since we started with how you felt about horror, and I know you mentioned at the beginning that you had a little bit of a opening of your mind to the concept of horror fiction. Now that we're at the end, do you have anything you want to say about your thoughts on genre fiction?
I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm curious because we've already decided that for next Halloween we're going to take a dive into. For a moment I forgot his name. It was just going to say crazy racist man. Lovecraft.
Yeah, hates progress Lovecraft.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm curious, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to that.
Don't need to worry about any blog posts about patriarchy from old Lovecraft. So we'll have a whole episode on just H.P. Lovecraft as an author. I think we need to get that out of the way before we even talk about his books.
Is now the time I should say, we can't say it on air, but go look up the name of his dog.
Oh God, no! His cat. No, we're not going to say that.
Yeah, just cut that out.
Yeah, no. So
with that, let's wrap up. In 2 weeks, our next book will be The Fold by Peter Klein. Lay.
I like how you don't give any details about the book. Just read it, you sheep.
Yeah, just fucking read it. It's
Go look at it on Goodreads. You have Google. I'm not your fucking babysitter.
It's the Mike Myers approach to comedy. You do it, and you just keep doing it, and eventually it's not funny, and then you just keep doing it some more, and eventually it will come around to being funny again.
Random shot at Mike Myers.
I think that's his method. That's why he's in all the movies. Anyway.
Mike Myers, all the movies. He hasn't been in a movie. Here. In your world, did The Love Guru just come out?
And eventually you'll get around to blogging about Mike Myers' triumphant comeback to film. It's all circular.
I fucking will.
Goddamn right. We'll link it on our site, and everyone
will
can
blog it. And I will talk about how Mike Myers is coming back, and he's bringing social justice with him. He will be playing 5 characters in the new movie.
All of them are women.
All of them win Oscars. All of them. He's going to be the first man to win Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress in one movie.
Why not throw in a director and writer?
Because it'll be directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, good. I want to see this movie now. Mike Myers, if you're listening, make it happen.
I will accept a consulting credit in lieu of payment.
So, back to Marjorie. Shit. She decided to study.
Back to Marjorie. She's Mike Myers. Shit, no. 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 No.